up, you guys? My name is Mina. Welcome to my channel, Mina Reads, and today I'm doing my November wrap-up. In November, I read 13 books. We should get started and talk about them. But before we do that, I just want to let you guys know that you should follow me on Instagram and Twitter and all that good stuff. Why not? I'm cool other places, so yeah, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter. On Twitter I've been doing some giveaways and buying people things from their wish list because it's the Christmas season of giving and all that good stuff. So make sure that you follow me on Twitter so you'll know when I'm asking for people's wish lists and stuff. So yeah, check me out. And let's talk about the books. Alright, so the first book that I read in November was Vicious by V.E. Schwab. This book is about these two characters named Victor and Eli, and it's a dual timeline narrative where in the first timeline we're following Victor and Eli while they're in college, and they are doing their senior thesis on the existence of EOs, extraordinaries, which is basically like superheroes. So they're trying to figure out if there's a scientific basis for superheroes and how superheroes get their powers. And so in college we see them kind of doing these experiments to see if they can create superhero powers within themselves using near-death experiences. So the two of them kind of take turns having near-death experiences and saving each other so that they can try and get these superpowers. And in our other timeline, we follow them 10-15 years later, and Victor and Eli are no longer cool, and Victor is trying to get revenge on Eli for an unknown thing. So I give this book a 3.5 star because for me the concept was really cool. I really like the idea of superheroes and investigating the scientific basis of superheroism, and I really liked the way that this story plays with superheroes and morality, the idea of powers, and just because you have powers doesn't mean that you're a good and moral person. And I really enjoyed that, and it kind of reminded me of The Boys on Amazon Prime, if you guys watch that show. So if you do like that show, you probably will like this. I think it's a really interesting take on superheroes, and it has morally ambiguous characters if that's something you're into. My only thing about it is that I didn't feel super connected to the story. I'm not always a huge fan of dual timeline narratives, so that's part of the reason for me probably. I don't know, I just didn't feel as connected to the story or to the characters as I would have wanted to, but it was still really good. And the next book that I read was These Violent Delights by Micah Nemever. I think that's the person's name, but I don't have it written in front of me, so I'm sorry. But These Violent Delights follow these two characters, Paul and Julian. Paul and Julian basically meet in college. They meet in an ethics class, and they kind of feel like they're the only people who truly understand true morality. So they become very connected with one another, very obsessed with one another. Their relationship is very toxic and unhealthy and codependent, and it's weird as fuck, and they are very, very bad for each other, but they are also so dependent on each other emotionally, and they feel like they are the only two people in the world who understand anything. There's this intellectual superiority thing going on with them, and this is a dark academia novel. So in the prologue of the book we see them committing a murder. The story is kind of unfolding to that point when they commit the murder. I personally would say go into this knowing that this book is a character study. I would not expect it to be some super fun action-packed thriller, because this is very much a character study about Julian and Paul's really fucked up relationship. It's all about their relationship, and it's all about Paul and his self-loathing, because he's our main narrator. So it's about his self-loathing, his depression, and how his own mental health issues play into how he perceives certain situations and interactions with other people in his life. And I don't know, I really love this book. I was really obsessed with it. I gave it 4 stars because the writing was just so beautiful. I thought the characters were so interesting. Their dynamic was really interesting and fucked up, and I really was so fascinated by it. The only reason I can't give it 5 stars is because I really do think that it was just too slow. I think the book was way too long. It should have just been a 350 page book, but it was a almost 500 page book, and I just think that that was way too much. It could have been way shorter, but I still think that it was really, really cool. I would definitely recommend it if you're into dark academia, if you like stories that are more like a character study, especially reading about really toxic individuals. If you like that, you should totally read this. Then, in a complete change of pace, after that I read Spoiler Alert by Olivia Dade. We follow these two characters, Marcus and April. Marcus is an actor on a popular TV show that's sort of like Game of Thrones, and then April is just, a everyday geologist, and she basically is in the fandom for Marcus's TV show. The twist on this is that Marcus is also in the fandom for his TV show, and he writes fan fiction, and him and April are actually friends on this fan fiction website. And basically what happens is that April, she posts like this cosplay picture online, and Marcus asks her out, unknowing that they are actually already friends on like this anonymous fan fiction platform. I really love Marcus and April so much. Like, they're one of my favorite couples of the year. The way that Olivia Day wrote this couple and wrote like their connection, their chemistry, like the emotional intimacy that is present in this book is just so good. Like, I absolutely love these characters. They were so fun, they were so funny, and I really love them like an extreme amount. And I feel like this is a trope that I actually kind of enjoy, when two characters like know each other online but like anonymously, and then they meet in person but they don't know it's the other person. I don't know why, but I'm into that. It's just like something I really like. Another book that has that trope is Hold Me by Courtney Milan, and they both slapped. I really love them. But yeah, I was just a huge fan of Spoiler Alert. I just thought that it was so cool. It was so fun. I think if you're into fandom and you're into like fanfic writing and stuff like that, like, you'll really appreciate this. I feel like Olivia Dade has a very good understanding of fandom, and she didn't write about fandom in a way that was like super duper cringy. It was like a little bit cringy. The concept itself is a bit cringy. Like, imagine an actor on a TV show like writing fan fiction for their own TV show. Like, that's kind of weird, a little bit cringe. So it's not like a cringe-free concept, but it is a really fun concept. I really loved it. I really love Marcus's character. He is such a well-rounded individual, and I just love him so much. Like, he's my new favorite character. He's my baby. Oh my god, he was literally perfect. And Marcus also has dyslexia, and I really liked how the story discussed him having dyslexia and how that impacts his his life in general as a reader and as a writer, and like the accommodations that he uses. I thought that it was really interesting, and I just really love Marcus so much, and I really just love the book so much. Like, I love them as a couple. I love them as individual characters. This book made me emotional. I was so happy reading it. It was just like so good. So yeah, I gave it 5 stars. Then after that, I read 2 books that were basically like the same exact premise. In Treat, we follow this couple, and their sexual relationship is pretty tame, and so the husband, he's a bit vanilla and his wife is more kinky than him, so he decides to treat her to this sex party like on Halloween, and it's really hot. That's all I'm gonna say on that. It's really hot. I really liked it. You know, I gave it 4 stars. But then Anything Once is kind of a similar premise, where it's about this like couple and they're like, you know, revitalizing their sex life or whatever. But basically Anything Once is about these 2 characters, and the wife comes home one day and she finds her husband and he's like watching porn and masturbating, and she has like a whole conniption about it, and she's like, oh my god, like, I'm not fulfilling him sexually, blah blah blah. So the whole book is about them basically like, you know, acting out some of their fantasies together, but their fantasies are like really tame. Like, the man, like the husband, his fantasy is for his wife to give him a blowjob. Like,
ciao. Anyway, so
it's like very tame stuff. So like, I gave it 3 stars because, I mean, it was cute. I thought they were a cute couple. I liked seeing them, you know, communicate with each other better about their desires and their wants and their sexual needs and all that. That was cool, but like I said, it wasn't quite as like steamy as I wanted it to be, especially with a title like Anything Once, and then the Anything Once that they're doing is blowjob. It was like, it was a bit lackluster in my opinion. Okay, so after that I read The Risk by S.T. Abbey. Now this book, I was not expecting to love this book. I think I kind of randomly stumbled upon it when I was scrolling through Goodreads, and somebody had just like rated it 5 stars, and they were like, oh my god, this book is so good, and I had never heard of it. And I was looking at the cover, and the cover of this book is so ugly. Like, it's so despicably ugly that I can't even. Like, I literally never would have picked it up if it wasn't for this one review that I read. But I picked it up, and The Risk is about this character named Lana, and Lana is a serial killer. Think Dexter. She is Dexter. She, you know, she has her whole like murder room and everything. She is a serial killer baby. She ends up meeting this dude at a coffee shop, and she's like, oh, he seems nice, you know, maybe I'll go out with him. So she goes out with him, and she finds out that he's an FBI agent. So she starts dating this FBI agent, and the whole book is her like committing her murders and like planning who she's gonna murder next in between dates with her FBI agent boyfriend. Lana as a character, I really love her, and I just thought that she was so funny, and like her interactions with Logan, her boyfriend, was funny as fuck, and it was just good. And it's a series, so I'm excited to read more of them. It's just like, it's just such a fun concept, like a serial killer in a relationship with an FBI agent, and they're trying to hide the fact that they're a serial killer. Meanwhile, she has like a kill room in her house. It's just like, the concept of it is just so ridiculous, and I absolutely loved it. Like, it was so fun. I gave it 4 stars. It was just like such a fun time. Like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? It was just so cool. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, it was just fun. It was fun to read. I will say definitely like a trigger warning for the fact that Lana, people that she's killing, she's doing it because they sexually abused her in the past. So there is like a lot of mention and references to those facts. But the tone of the book in general is not like super grim dark. It's more like lighthearted satire in a way. So I would definitely say that is a really enjoyable read, but do be aware of the triggers. So after reading that, I ended up reading 2 volumes of Haikyuu. Haikyuu is a manga about a volleyball team called Karasuno. In these volumes of Haikyuu, we're following Karasuno as they enter the nationals, and they're just playing against the other teams in the nationals basically. And I don't know how else to describe it, but like Haikyuu is just literally amazing. Like, the character development is so cool. I don't give a fuck about sports, but somehow I still love Haikyuu, and I still feel really passionate like reading about these characters in their games. I think that my favorite part about like Haikyuu is the way that the story kind of invests you in the characters' motivations for winning, and like seeing their mental fortitude, seeing the way that they train and prepare for their games and stuff. It's just like, I don't know why, but it's just so emotionally rewarding. So then I read Written in the Stars by Alexandria Bell Fleur, and this is a sapphic rom-com about these 2 characters, Elle and Darcy. So Elle and Darcy end up on this blind date with one another. Their blind date ends horrendously. There's some spilled wine on an expensive dress. There's one person showing up an hour late. I mean, it's a really terrible blind date. So they have this terrible date, and then Darcy, her brother, is the one who set up the date. So she ends up lying to her brother and telling him like, oh, the date went really well, even though it really didn't. So they end up fake dating so Darcy can avoid revealing the fact that she lied to her brother about how well the date went. So they end up fake dating, and the fake dating turns into real feelings, as fake dating often does in these books. And I thought that this was a really cute story. I wasn't 100% invested in like it, not because the story wasn't good, but something about the writing style just didn't really click for me personally. So for me, it was just like a 3-star read, but I would definitely encourage other people to read it if they're interested in it, because it is a really cute like sapphic fake dating rom-com, and I definitely think that it is enjoyable and like fun and everything, but I just didn't feel as connected to it as I wanted to. So after that, I read The Burning God by R.F. Kuang. So the first book in the Poppy Wars series, we follow Rin, and she is attempting to enter this military academy. We follow her training to become a soldier, and then a war actually does break out in her country of Nikon as they are being invaded by foreign powers. So the first book is about that foreign invasion. The second book is about a civil war that breaks out in the country of Nikon, and this third book is a continuation of that civil war, and Rin is now currently leading her own troops. Rin, she is just such an interesting person. She makes such terrible decisions. She's not a good person, and I really love the way that the series investigates like the moral ambiguity of Rin as a person, and how her experiences and the traumas that she's undergone have influenced like her personal politics and her way of viewing the world. I just think that Rin is such an interesting character, and this was a really great conclusion to a series. I gave it 5 stars. I think that this story did in some places falter for me. I think some of the storylines were a little bit rushed, and I could tell that the author was kind of trying to wrap up some of the subplots of the series, but I think that the book probably could have been longer. It could have been like maybe 100 pages longer to stretch it out and give some of these subplots the attention that they really deserved. But overall, I thought that it was a really cool book, and I liked it. And it was, you know, it was great. R.F. Kuang is a really amazing writer, and what else can I say about it? It was really good. So after that, I read Empire of Gold by S.A. Chakraborty, which is the final book in the Devabad trilogy. So the Devabad trilogy is about this woman named Nahri. She's a con woman. She ends up summoning a jinn accidentally in the first book, and she is whisked away to the magical city of Devabad. So in this third book, we're following Nahri, Ali Zaid, and Dara, our 3 protagonists. So Nahri and Ali are trying to find their way back to Devabad after they have kind of magically been deposited in Egypt, so they need to find their way back home. And we're also following Dara, who is not necessarily on the good guy's side, and he's kind of figuring out that he's not on the right side of history. I personally really love this book. I think that it expands on the world building of the series a lot. It's really fun. It's really fast paced. It has some of my favorite elements of the story, which is like S.A. Chakraborty's really lush writing style is amazing. I really love the world building. I really love the characters. And I also was a huge fan of the way that the book kind of just expands the world and expands some of the lore that we learn about and everything like that. It was just really cool in my opinion. It was really fun. It was really fast paced, and it was a cool conclusion to a series that I really love. So I definitely appreciate it, and I gave it 5 stars. And I read Radiance by Gracia Draven. This is one of my favorite books. Like I talk about it all the time. Absolutely obsessed with it. But Radiance by Gracia Draven, we follow these 2 characters, Brescian and Ildiko, and they are from 2 rivaling kingdoms. And so Brescian is the prince of the Kai, and the Kai are kind of like different race than the human race. I guess you could say they're monstrous. They are really tall, and they have gray skin and yellow eyes and claws and fangs and shit like that. So the Kai and the Gari are trying to unite their peoples and enact some trade agreements between them. So they decide to have like a marriage between their 2 royal families for a political alliance to occur. So Brescian and Ildiko, they have to get married, and this is an arranged marriage trope, and this book is so interesting. Like the way that Brescian and Ildiko react to their marriage to each other is so interesting, and I really love them. I think that their banter together is so funny, and they're just like, it's interesting to read a romance about 2 people who are not like physically attracted to each other, and they talk about how they find the other person like so visually unappealing all the time, and it's really hilarious to me. And I really like the fact that their bond is really based in like mutual respect for each other, and as time goes on they start to fall in love with each other platonically and then romantically, and then how like that love that they feel for each other kind of transitions into them feeling more attracted to the other person. I just think it's really cool and really interesting, and I really like the little bit of world building that we get in here. There is some plot stuff going on where there's kind of like a war brewing outside of the Kai and Gori kingdoms with this other kingdom called the Belladine, and that's in this. I wouldn't say that the plot is the strongest element of the story, but the strongest element of the story is definitely Brescian and Ildiko and their relationship, which is really interesting. The way that they support each other, and they just have such a healthy dynamic and amazing communication skills. We love to see it. They're just iconic. And like, maybe monsters are sexy. I've decided that monsters are sexy because Brescian is my monster husband. I absolutely love him so much, so maybe monsters are sexy.
In case you haven't noticed, I'm weird. I'm a weirdo.
Okay, and the last book that I have to tell you guys about is An Anonymous Girl by Sarah Pekkanen and Greer Hendricks. And this is about this girl. What's her name? Okay, so An Anonymous Girl is basically about this girl named Jessica. And Jessica decides to enter this psychological study because she could get paid like money for participating in the study. So she ends up joining this study, and she meets this doctor named Dr. Shields. And so this is basically about how Dr. Shields and her form this relationship that's really weird, and the ways that Dr. Shields is kind of manipulating and gaslighting her. And so basically this is about Dr. Shields and Jessica's relationship and how that develops, and this kind of tangled web of lies and deceit and jealousy and all this other stuff. I give this book 3 stars. I thought that it was very engaging to read, and I read it pretty quickly. Like, it was really engaging, but the plot is so fucking stupid. Like, it's so dumb, and like the plot twist is stupid, and it just was like, it just wasn't, it was very meh. Like, the plot was just so ridiculous, and Jessica, she was so dumb. Like, she was like that girl in a horror movie where you're screaming at her to not go into the scary looking like haunted house, and then she goes in anyway. She was that bitch. So I was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? She was so dumb. It was enjoyable enough to keep reading it, but it wasn't like, oh my god, 5 stars, I absolutely loved it. Like, no, it wasn't. But it was fast-paced read. I was engaged the entire time. But yeah, Miss Jessica, she, no thoughts, head empty. She didn't have a single brain cell, and that's all I have to say on that. So yeah, this was my really messy wrap up, because apparently I don't know how to film wrap ups anymore, and I just don't know how to talk about books either. I don't fucking know. I am going through it. My brain is a bit fried because it's final season. Yeah, that's basically all the books I read in November. Let me know what your favorite book that you read in November was. And yeah, I will see you all in my next video. Bye, you guys. Like, comment, and subscribe. And a special thank you to all of my wonderful patrons.